bond today. When you get to that judge who's going to have your case indictment onward, meaning on through trial or plea or however your case is resolved, that's another opportunity for your lawyer, and you'll have a different public defender once you get assigned a judge, once you get indicted, for you and that lawyer to say, Judge, we need to talk about bond. Okay? Yes, all right. Mr. Cazzoli, when you are ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, Mr. McCaslin is 39 years old, 34 years old, my apologies, Your Honor. He has a good address at 2741 Old National Parkway. He's been living in the metro Atlanta area for the last 4 years, but has been living in Georgia his entire life. Your Honor, he has a good job. He's been doing maintenance for the Alexandra Property Group for some time. Your Honor, he has 7 children, ages ranging from 1 to 15 years. Your Honor, my understanding, again, at least in Fulton County, no felony convictions. My understanding is he is not on probation, not on parole, another very limited criminal history. I will note, Your Honor, another contrast here, and again, not to get too into the weeds before there's a preliminary hearing, but the allegation here, Your Honor, does appear to be that of murder in the second degree, based off of a cruelty to children in the second degree. The allegations, at least, are that a child unsupervised consumed a harmful substance and unfortunately passed away. Your Honor, I think that, again, we have not been able to parse out all the facts and figure out exactly what there's probable cause for or not. But I will certainly say, Your Honor, in terms of intent to harm, Your Honor, that's a very different picture than.
Right. My understanding is, just to cut to the chase in terms of the factual allegations, and right now they're only allegations. Mr. McCaslin is here with the presumption of innocence in his favor, that Mr. McCaslin and Ms. Kuykendall had at least one child shared in common. That child got access to methamphetamine and cocaine, I think it's in a hotel room, that Mr. McCaslin and Ms. Kuykendall occupied, consumed that methamphetamine and cocaine, and died from overdosing on those drugs. Probably not the kids' drugs, probably the adults' drugs, whether they were for personal use or for sale. But it is a very different category than you shot someone in the head, you shot someone in the chest, you stabbed someone. It's tragic, it's reckless, it's irresponsible, if those are the facts. But just to get to your intent point, I didn't see anything in just reviewing the case file that suggested that this was an outcome anyone was looking for.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, and that's a good summary of my position here. For that reason, Your Honor, and again, and you briefly touched on it, but the fact that there is a co-defendant in this case adds kind of another layer of complication in terms of determining fault. Again, that's something that's going to be handled at a separate time, but we do just ask that the court consider that as it relates to the IALA factors, as it relates to likelihood to to commit new felonies, as it relates to danger to the community and persons. And Your Honor, in his his strong ties to the community. Again, he's been an Atlanta resident almost as long as I have. He's been a Georgia resident his entire life. So, Your Honor, our request would be a bond not to exceed $40,000 on the murder charge, 10 on the cruelty to children charge, and 5 on the VGCSA.
So is it 55?
55 total, Your Honor, would be our request.
All right. Mr. McCaslin, you said had 7 kids. That's excluding the deceased?
Your Honor, I believe that may be including the deceased.
So you have 6 surviving kids.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and they are where right now?
My youngest 1-year-old is with my co-defendant's mother.
Okay.
And the other 5 are with their mothers.
Okay. And when you were not in custody and Ms. Kuykendall was not in custody, it sounds like you and Ms. Kuykendall had 2 kids who stayed with you?
Yes.
And then your other 5 would have been with those children's mother? You might see them from time to time, but home for them was their mother's.
Yes, sir.
But active in your life on a regular daily basis would be?
We was in the hotel room, so we had been struggling since Corona.
Okay, but staying with you in the hotel room, 2 kids?
Plus my nephew, I have custody of my sister's kids.
Okay, how many kids is that?
2.
2. So you had 4 kids in the room with you?
Yes, sir.
All right. 2 of them are yours and Ms. Kuykendall's, and then 2 are your sister's kids.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you. Ms. Jackson, can you share with me any criminal history information you have for Mr. McCaslin?
He has 14 cycles. The last arrest was June the 11th, 2024 in College Park, Georgia, for driving while licensed suspended or revoked. There was no disposition for that arrest. He does.
I can't have pork or red meat.
Hold on 1 second. That's someone else. Shut that down. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. He does appear to have an open case pending in Fulton County for theft by receiving stolen property. That case number is 24 PI 003210. And he did receive first offender treatment for a felony in 2010 for burglary and possession of tools for commission of a crime. That case was sealed February the 14th, 2018. And he does have a misdemeanor conviction and a sentence. He received a nolo contendere sentence in 2018 out of Gwinnett County for driving while licensed suspended or revoked. And there was a conviction in 2017 out of Liburn, Georgia for a hit and run and driving while licensed suspended or revoked and acquiring a license plate for purpose of concealing. Nothing in addition, Your Honor.
Thank you. Let me look up the other new case. Mr. McCaslin, you received a bond on the theft by receiving case. It doesn't say anything in here about whether you posted that bond. How long have you been in jail?
I've been in jail for almost 4 weeks now.
Okay, so you must have made bond on the theft by receiving case. Got it. It just doesn't show that you posted bond. So you got out and then were arrested in connection with this situation. Okay. The address that's listed for you in the system based on that theft case is 2751 Hamilton Road.
I haven't stayed there since 2012 right now. That's Cobb County.
Yeah, it is Cobb County. So that's an old address. This Old National is the more current address. Is that the hotel room or that's a house?
That's the hotel room.
Okay. All right. Okay, Ms. Clark.
Yes, Your Honor. The state is asking for this court to deny the bond in this case. First, Your Honor, based on the strength of the case in this matter, this is more than just a reckless situation, a child murder that could have actually been prevented. In this particular case, the defendant, the deceased child, Josiah, he actually was rushed to Choa Hospital July 19th of 2024 for poisoning of THC. So he tested positive for THC based on infirmities in his body. He was kept overnight. So the parents were under monitoring by DHS at that time because of that. Moving on to, in addition, Your Honor, the August 12th, the College Park Police Department, their special operations, did an undercover buy. The defendant in this case is alleged to have sold drugs to a confidential informant out of that hotel room that the child was in this case. In addition, the date of the incident, Your Honor, there is surveillance footage that shows that provides where the hotel is. And also you can see who goes in and out of the room. There's surveillance footage that shows that that Ms. Kuykendall left the hotel room, and defendant McCaslin was not in the hotel room. The child was in that room unattended for a great length of time, based on the timestamps. And there was a level of deception once the child actually came to Showa and was pronounced dead. The parents sort of kind of like their stories were differing. There was a search warrant completed. An enactment was done by Deputy McCauley in this case.
What was the word you used, or what was done by?
A reenactment,
oh,
okay. so that the parents could, I guess, give their account of what happened. And there was deception in that particular, what they were saying happened. But if you see the surveillance footage, you see that the McCaslin is seen running out of the motel room with the child in his arms. He's making a phone call. Defendant Kuykendall, she's seen going and throwing a white trash bag into a trash can near their room. Then McCaslin gets into an ambulance with the child around 5:12 p.m. And defendant Kuykendall actually left the hotel room in a vehicle. Unknown male actually is seen on camera getting that same trash bag out of the car, out of that trash can, and then getting in the car with defendant Kuykendall. An autopsy was done on the deceased child in this case. And it was determined, the toxicology report determined that at the time of death, that the deceased child had 10,541 milliliters of cocaine and 53.2 milliliters of methamphetamine in his system. It was determined that the child's cause of death is combined toxic effects of cocaine and methamphetamine, and the manner of death was concluded to be a homicide. And for those reasons, Your Honor, the state is of the opinion that based on the strength of the case, that the defendant is, first of all, a risk of flight because of the fact that he does have an FTA from 2018 out of Gwinnett County. And he does have a failure to report from a probation violation in 2018 as well. He has April 15, 2019, a probation violation out of Gwinnett County again. And he's a threat to community and people because based off of the evidence in this case, the defendant was actually selling drugs out of the hotel room that they were actually living in. We do believe that there is a risk of him committing felonies pending trial. The defendants in this case share another child, Legacy, who, even though the child is with a family member of hers, that child is being monitored by DHS based on the seriousness and circumstances of the case. And for these reasons, Your Honor, we're asking that bond be denied in this case.
Mr. Cazzoli, anything you want to add in closing on behalf of Mr. McCaslin?
Yes, Your Honor. So there was some of the information provided by the state. Of course, this is a much more complete officer narrative and warrant that I have. So some of that, Your Honor, I was aware of. But I will say, Your Honor, the state described this right off the bat as something more than reckless, and then proceeded to describe facts that perfectly describe reckless behavior. And that's, again, just within the four corners. This isn't us necessarily agreeing to any of these accusations, but it does, the picture that's painted here is pretty much by definition one of recklessness. I will also note, Your Honor, and again, I do want to be careful before preliminary hearing, especially before Ms. Kuykendall has any sort of representation of her own. But I think it's important to note for the purposes of bond, Your Honor, that the description provided by the state, any time she described the conduct done by Mr. McCaslin, is that he wasn't at the home and Ms. Kuykendall was there, and then Ms. Kuykendall left. We'll also note, Your Honor, that Mr. McCaslin was again described with whatever else was going on there, as taking the child and running to a car on the phone, which is exactly the sort of response you would want from a parent. There was a potential overdose, a potential consumption of poison. So again, Your Honor, we understand that the accusations are serious, and none of this is a request to dismiss or downplay any of the accusations. But what was described by the state, Your Honor, I think it supports the idea that Mr. McCaslin is somebody who should get a reasonable bond in this matter as requested.
Thank you. Mr. Cozzoli, I think you have a compelling case at this juncture that may get only more compelling about this being more about recklessness than evil intent. I hope that's how the case plays out, mostly for Mr. McCaslin and Ms. Kuykendall's soul, that this was a tragic, tragic accident. It's not a great case for bond, because I find that while Mr. McCaslin was out on bond for a theft case, he was in a situation where either he had large quantities of personal use methamphetamine and cocaine, or was involved in that as a side hustle. Times were tough. They were living out of a hotel room. It wasn't a time where working as a maintenance worker was meeting all the many needs of the many children that Mr. McCaslin has. My concern is not flight. I don't think Mr. McCaslin would leave behind the family that he's got. My concern is that I don't think there's a set of conditions I could impose that would keep Mr. McCaslin out of trouble. Not the kind of trouble that is alleged here, but the kind of trouble that resulted in these allegations because of what was going on in and out of that hotel room. That said, I am happy to revisit this after a preliminary hearing where more evidence comes to light. And Mr. McCaslin, I told this to the previous defendant here, not Ms. Kuykendall, completely different case. You are entitled to a bond, absolutely, if the state has not indicted your case within 90 days. So we will reconvene at a minimum on day 91, if not day 90, if the state has not indicted you. And we could reconvene before then if Mr. Cozzoli, in looking through the information he gets through a preliminary hearing, thinks we ought to talk about this again. Ms. Clark, anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, may I be excused?
Yes, ma'am, appreciate you being here.
Thank you. You too. You gotta go back downstairs. Sit down. Oh, okay.
So, Mr. Abate, we reached out to Ms. Baker. I'm not familiar with that attorney, but she now represents position 10, Mr. Beatty. She had no notice to be here, and I don't think she's going to be able to make it. But that just may, when she plugs in, she may file a motion